I'm looking at your box, why did you have to? Because you're daft about it all the time.
Tom, can you shut the door? Shut that door. Right, good evening, Portishead. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. Great to see so many people here. There's been some rumours that democracy is dead in Portishead, but clearly it seems to be breathing into life this evening.
Do you think it shows that we care?
I think it definitely shows people care, which is what's really important. Thank you. So my name's Paul Gardner. I'm a local resident and I've lived here for the last 14 years. As I say, there's some reports of democracy is dead, and I'm sure it's not. I'm just going to do a very short introduction to why we're here and how the meeting is going to be run. But this is a residents' meeting. There's a little bit of procedure to go through. We need to elect a chairperson, who won't be me. You'll be glad to know. So why we're here, so just very briefly, probably most people have got some idea, but there's clearly been some serious issues in local government in Portishead, and a lot of people feel that there's a broken relationship between the council and a large number of residents. Whether that's perception or reality, that's what people think. It's been going on for a long time. I won't go into all the details, but it's well documented, and recently the situation got even worse when the council decided to change its procedures recently to stop people talking unless they actually had their item on the agenda and have to pre-agree everything with councillors. So that might have been the kind of straw that broke the camel's back. So on behalf of quite a few residents, I proposed a motion at the last council meeting to have a special residents meeting, which is this, as it's allowed by the 1972 Local Government Act. So we are here for a kind of negative reason, but rather just focusing on the negative, what we're hoping tonight is we get a lot of positive ideas from people about how they would like to communicate with our council and for positive things for Portishead as a whole. So really we're looking for positive ideas, and I'll go through it in a minute, but we'll be capturing those and see if we can take those to the council at their next meeting. So that's a little bit of background. The meeting itself, how's it going to work? Okay, so our town clerk can't be here tonight, but she's given me all information, which I'll try and get right. As I say, the most important thing in a minute, we'll elect a chair. But just to stress, this is a residents' meeting, it's not a council meeting. Anyone may speak, young or old. Any children who wish to speak will be particularly welcome. There's no time limit per speaker. The chair will obviously ask people to be concise. There are some councillors here, so thanks to the councillors who have come tonight. But they're here in their capacity as residents or electors and have the same right to speak as everyone else as an elector. Some people may not wish to be photographed or videoed, so we have kindly Ben over there who's videoing the meeting and live streaming it. So if you don't want to be, if there's anyone in that camp, you probably need to sit in the corner over there because there's a camera anywhere, that CCTV camera behind you, so Big Brother's watching. Has anyone got any objections? Just stand over there. So we have Paul Thurston over there. He's going to be take some notes on the flip chart of key kind of points as we go through, so just to help people follow proceedings. And we've got Caroline here who's taking the minutes, so both Paul, Caroline and Ben are all local residents who just volunteered tonight, so Thank you very much for your help. Voting, you should have red voting cards. So immediately that we have some motions put forward. So anyone who's a local elector can vote. And that means anyone over 16 years old can vote actually. So resolutions and votes, just so you're clear, they're not binding on the council. However, it says in the National Association of Local Council rules that resolutions provide an indication of the views of the local electors, and it is good practice but not a requirement for a council to consider them formally. Clearly, some of us residents will take whatever motions are put forward tonight and take them formally to a council meeting for further discussion and hopefully action. Okay, is that clear? Is there any questions on that at all?
Yeah, why don't you start off by telling the people what the parish council is actually responsible for? That would be a good place to start. What are they responsible for?
Well, we can come to that in a minute. Once we can ask that question in the main meeting, I think.
Just a point, because the hearing loop is linked to the microphone, could everybody speak through the microphone? Otherwise, some of us may not be able to hear.
Okay, thank you. We'll take that question in the. If you can ask it again in a minute, can you please? The vice chair and the chair of the council have given their apologies. So basically, the rules are the parish meeting may appoint a person to take the chair, and that person shall have the purposes, for the purposes of that meeting, have the powers and authority of the chairman. So basically, the chair will manage the meeting, and the chair's word will be final. So we need a volunteer. So does anyone volunteer to be the chair? So Nick Crawford's kindly volunteered. Does anyone else want to volunteer? Okay, so thank you, Nick. As we've only got one volunteer, that's fantastic. So we don't need to have a vote. So I'm going to now hand over to Nick as the chair. As I said, you'll be glad to know I'm going to sit down and be quiet. And Nick's going to take over from here. Thank you, Nick.
Good evening, everyone. Right, a bit of housekeeping first, please. Fire exits in the event of fire are at the back and over there. Don't collect your belongings if there is a fire. The assembly point is across the road in the Folk Hall car park. The last person leaving should shut the door. And please keep all the fire exits clear. There you go. Paul's gone through some of these issues, but I'll just go through now. We'd like people to be aware of the time. I hope the meeting finishes no later than 10 p.m, please. You should all have a copy of the agenda. Yeah, okay. If you wish to address the meeting, please raise your hand, and it says here the microphone will come round to you, but I think it's easier for everyone to come up, if you could please, because I think we might have a problem with the mobile microphone. Please give your name so the minute taker can take a note. You're not limited to the amount of time you need to speak, but please be concise because we are limited on time tonight. Please don't speak over one another and allow people the courtesy to express their opinions, whether you agree with it or not. And you already know that it's all being recorded, so if you object or anything else like that, please just say beforehand. I'm sure everyone's quite happy.
Can you confirm that you're a resident you're voting for today?
Say again, sorry?
Can you confirm that you're a resident and voting for today?
I am a resident, yes. I live up at Badger Rise. Yeah. It says here the chair's word is final, so we'll see how that goes. Okay, so I'm going to try. We haven't got that many people who want to speak and put their name down so far, but I will try and pull them together so that at least everything seems to run smoothly. So I think we'll start with, was it the other topics we're going to start with? So Janet first?
Well, probably, she's got a presentation, so we just do that.
Yeah, okay, so Janet is going to do a presentation on developer money.
We've got the vice chair and the chairman. Nobody else.
Not been told of anyone else. I'll double check in a minute.
Do we have any other apologies apart from the chair and vice chair of the said town council?
Oh, sorry, yeah, I should have said that. Councillor Mitchell sends his apologies.
So Councillor Mitchell, and who was the other one?
That's it.
And Councillor Cottrell as well.
Oh, Cottrell as
so
well.
their apologies.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Some of you may have seen my letters in the paper about S106 money. I'm not a financial wizard, I'm a piano teacher, and I have a calculator. But I did request, under Freedom of information about Section 106 money, and I've pored over these documents since 2016 and asked lots of questions about which I've never received answers for. So I decided to ask further questions, and I've come up with the following.
Sorry, John, the projector.
I'll give my introduction whilst Paul gets the projector working. Section 106 contributions is money agreed between developers and North Somerset Council to be used to mitigate the impact of development on the area where the development has taken place. Discussions take place as to what the money should be spent on and include such things as affordable housing, additional stock in the library, providing additional spaces in local schools, enhancement of the high street and other areas, landscaping and enhancement of public spaces, including the lake grounds, sports and leisure facilities, and community transport. And most of that should come up on a slide when...
I think we better carry on this. Can't find the remote control anyway.
Okay. Right, so those are the things that are mostly covered with S106 money. The slide will come up, showing all of those things there. And when it comes up, it'll be much clearer for you.
Yes, we found it.
Okay.
Warming up.
You can't get it here, isn't it?
Tell a joke, isn't it?
No, I don't. I'll tell you, my first calculator that I tried to use is an old one from Bristol Water, and it actually was run by water. You had to actually put water in it. And it gradually dried up and all my figures disappeared. So I went to Morgan Wesley and I bought another one, and I got that one back, and that wasn't working properly. So I was doing all my figures in my head, not very well, and so that then I had to go out and buy another calculator, and luckily this one worked. Right, can we have the first slide, please? Here we have the affordable housing, school places, library books, enhancing the high street, community transport, enhancing public spaces and sports and leisure. Right, can we have slide 2, Paul, please? Some of this money has a use-by date, and after this date, any unused money should be returned to the developer. Let's look at a typical project in more detail. For example, money from the Gordano Gate Sainsbury's development has a contributions return date of the 6th of May 2019. This is intended to be spent on those things that I said before, and the £123,239 has been spent since 2016 on cab stand, footpath upgrades, high street car parking, town centre signage and advertising, leaving £415,916 as yet unused. And it's supposed to be spent by the 6th of May next year.
Janet, where does the money stay? Where is it in the money?
It's in a bank account in North Somerset Council.
Okay.
Yeah. A further example, can we go back? Actually, Paul, sorry. Yeah. A further example of contributions yet unspent is £31,171 for library stock, with a spend by date of July 2017. Let's hope the council has secured that money for the council, for the town, and it hasn't been lost. Affordable housing. That's a typical area of spend. The snag for Portishead, though, is that money for affordable housing may be earned in Portishead, but does not have to be spent here. There's a requirement for it to be spent in North Somerset Council Administrative District, and this accounts for the £45,000 already spent on affordable housing in Weston from the United Reformed Church S106 contributions. Conversely, money earned on projects elsewhere in North Somerset could be spent here, but that doesn't seem to happen. The contributions for affordable housing, which you can see there, is £45,000 from the United Reformed Church spent in Weston, £70,000 from the Brackenwood Gardens small estate, which hasn't yet been spent, and £173,398 invoiced, not yet received, and we have no idea where any of that will be spent. Finally, between July 2016 and September 2018, I get my piece of paper, because I've only got records from 2016. And I am aware that Section 106 contributions have been received and spent prior to that date. However, when comparing the state of Section 106 money between July 2016 and September 2018, I note that £499,547 has been spent, £287,085 has been received and not spent, and £995,487 has been agreed and not yet received, although much of this has been invoiced already. This gives a total of £2 million, £782,119. And if you look very carefully on that pie chart, we have the blue section that's already been spent and benefited Portishead. We have 46% of it sitting in North Somerset Council's bank account, 36% not yet collected, 2% on the £45,000 from affordable housing has already been spent in Weston, and that only leaves, in the last 2 years, 16% of that money has benefited Portishead. I therefore propose, because I think we need to know more about this, I wish to propose a motion to this meeting, and I'd like a vote from you, please, as follows. The meeting calls upon Councillor David Pasley in his role as a councillor for Portishead, and also in his role as an executive member of North Somerset Council, to make a presentation to residents of our town on the subject of Section 106 money for Portishead, and to inform us how and when these funds will benefit our town. All in favour of this motion, please could you raise your voting papers.
Okay.
Basically, people put their cards down.
I think that's,
Sorry,
most people seem to want that.
anyone
Would you like
against?
to
Sorry, hang on. Just.
put your hand up if you're against that motion being passed? Thank you, Ken. Thank you.
One
We
against.
should get the solicitor up here and tell us exactly what 106 means. Not what we think it means, what's the actual legal position.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Can you repeat your question, because we can't hear what he said?
Ken wants to know, wants to get a solicitor up here to say what Section 106 means, rather than the county solicitor, rather than what I think it means, because he thinks that we need to have better information. I do partly agree with that, Ken, because it would be a really good idea to have full information about this £2.7 million that's supposed to be benefiting our town after we've suffered the building and all the upturn, whatever it is. Upheaval, that's the word I was looking for. All the upheaval of the building, all the infrastructure issues that we are left with, and yet we've only benefited so far from 16% of this money. Thank you. Yes, I'll do my best to answer questions.
Yeah, okay. I've got now, I live in Quantock Road.
Just hand over to me.
I think it might be an idea if we were to amend that resolution to say the county solicitor, as this gentleman at the back here has said, as well as David Pasley. Invite the county solicitor, invite them both.
Is everyone happy with that?
Can you just repeat the question? So the people, we just need to repeat the question.
I'm really sorry to reiterate that unless I cannot hear what is said unless it's said through the microphone, and maybe if you could just repeat briefly the comment rather than have people come up. But I'm afraid, otherwise, the hearing loop works through the mic.
That's fine. The proposal is that we get a solicitor who understands the county solicitor to come along to that meeting as well, Councillor David Pasley, so that they have an input to that meeting. Okay. Can you show your slips again, please?
Never a pen.
Thank you. Anyone object? No? Okay, that's fine. Karen, thank you.
Can we put a time limit on that? The proposal?
Janet?
I think that would be a brilliant idea.
When?
Repeat the question, Janet.
So it's being asked if there's a time, we should be putting a time limit on that.
Yeah. I don't know, what's
This year.
by the end of the year? Okay. Yes, could you raise your hands on that one as well, please? By the end of the year that we should ask this to happen. Financial year, maybe. Financial year? This year.
And it'll be then it'll
So is that meeting to take place this year, this calendar year, or this financial year? Okay, so again, sorry, show your slips for calendar year. Okay, thank you. Anyone against that motion?
Can I just say yes?
Yeah.
Can you go to the microphone, please?
Could you give your name as well, please? My name's Jeremy Ludlow. I just wanted to say that putting a time limit of this financial year, this calendar year, just means that if there's an excuse why it's impossible logistically for that to be arranged before December, if we put the time limit on it, it will then lapse and then not apply. I would say as soon as possible. And if we're going to put a time limit on it, it should be during this council year before the next before the end of March or whenever it is that the council is renewed. But yeah, that's a point.
Okay, your point's taken, but I think everyone's. Yeah.
Hasn't some of that money got to be spent by May?
By May, yeah. Some of that money's got to be spent by May. Yeah. Okay, so we'll leave it as originally voted, okay?
By the end of this calendar year.
By the end of this calendar year.
Right, thank you.
Jeff, you...
Okay.
Paul?
So there's a question at the back. Can you...
Does it have to be spent or does it just have to be committed?
The money? I don't know actually. Does it have to be spent or does it have to be committed by the date that is set?
I think that's one of the questions we need to ask as well, because I can't get to the bottom of that myself with the documents I already have. Did you get that?
Okay, that's fine. Right, Jeff, you need to go soon, so if you want to come up to the front and you want to speak on the subject of democracy.
Good evening all, my name is Jeff Hardman, local resident since 2003 and on the electoral register. 6 to 7 weeks ago, which is where this more or less started, there was a Rec and Works meeting where 9 people turned up to speak, only to be told that they changed standing orders and we could only talk about what was on the agenda. So that caused a bit of furore and they had to suspend the meeting for about 10 minutes so they could find out what's going on. Needless to say, 2 of the people who hadn't been to a town council meeting before walked out, although one did shout 1 or 2 little words. They're not obscenities. At the end of the meeting, the chair of Rec and Works asked what to put on the next meeting, to which 3 members of the public put their hands up. So the councillor suggested items to discuss at the next Rec and Works, at the next town council meeting. And she also took the 3 questions that we, the public, wanted on the next town council meeting, which was put on. At the following week's planning meeting, we could only talk about things that were on the planning agenda. And the strange thing about agendas is said by the town councillors that they don't want to talk about it, you ain't going to hear about it. Anyway, at the town council meeting, when most of the public had gone and they decided to discuss all the issues on Rec and Works and planning, when it came to Rec and Works, one town councillor suggested that the 3 items that the public suggested should not be discussed. So the town councillors voted not to discuss the items in question. So I write a letter saying democracy is dead, and the following week there's an article saying from Peter Mitchell and Leslie Cottrell saying democracy is not dead, it's alive and kicking, and we are a democracy. Where? Where is it? Because at the moment they've changed the standing orders and we can't talk about it. So if I want to talk about Rec and Works number 1802 about Pill Park, I can't talk about it because I've put it on the agenda. I've suggested that what they can also do on the agendas is put any other business. I'll go to plenty of meetings, and on every meeting I go to there's an agenda, item number 9 or 6, whatever it is, the last one, any other business. I get told, no, we're not allowed to do that in town council meetings. But if you go to Nailsea Town Council on their agenda, it has any other business. So where is our friend democracy? I don't know where he is, because I can't find him. The other issue we have in this town is roads. Somebody has attempted to make some repairs on West Hill. I really do hope we did not pay for that. Bristol Road, they decided to knock the central white line out of the way so we can both go that way, and now it's sinking. Are they going to fix it? There's no money in the budget. If we want West Hill fixed properly, including all the sunken areas, apparently it's going to cost £480,000. Now, for those who have much, much more money than me and live on Lake Road, might see me driving down there once every 5 or 6 weeks. And I drove past there on Sunday, and the 4 potholes over there 6 weeks ago are no more. Now, I don't want to cast aspersions on anybody, but I don't live there, and I'm on the council. But there are people on the town council and district council who live on that road, and they've got no more potholes. But you can't do Bristol Road. You can't do West Hill.
Do Beecham.
Apparently. If you had ventured into Mr. Ashton's ward, our glorious leader who lives in Portishead, every single village of his has 20-mile-an-hour signs in there, on one of the roads in there. Every one. Yet, we've got a rat run, which has 2 schools on it. And they refuse to put it down to 20. So when the motorway is chock-a-block, everybody takes a detour down Bristol Road. So, and there's young kids, and there's teenagers. So what we're asking for as members of the public who elected these people to serve what we need for this town, they need to wake up. We're not asking for much. If we come to town council meetings, because we, as members of Portishead, who love the town, have an issue, address the issue. I'll keep that short because there's loads of other people who want to speak and I've got elsewhere to go. Unfortunately, I run a cribbage league and they're all waiting for me. Any questions?
Have you got a motion?
Yeah, I have a motion. Do you want us to...
Sorry?
Do you want us to... Just the way it's standing.
I always felt this. Bring democracy back and serve the people, not their own interests and needs. I think that's fair enough. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks, Jeff. Well, because you've still got the topic of democracy down here, so it makes sense to speak next.
Hello, my name's Caritas. I'm a local resident, and I feel like I need to out myself as being a bit of a governance geek. That's one of the things that I like, trying to work out how organisations can run more efficiently. In fact, it's actually part of my day job. A little while ago, there was a little review into standing orders, and for people who don't know what standing orders are, they are the way the local town council is run. And being a bit of a geek, I actually submitted some suggestions. Virtually every single one of them was rejected. And I just wanted to share them with you, because maybe I could gather your opinions on them, because our esteemed councillor colleagues didn't like them particularly, and see what you think. So the first one I suggested was something called a call to debate. And this isn't a radical thing, this is actually done by Bristol City Council. And what it is if a percentage, and it's got to be quite a high percentage, of citizens in the town wish an issue to be discussed, they can do an online petition, and it's all verified, and when that number reaches a certain number, then the town council would have to vote for it, and have it on for discussion at a town council meeting. The reply from the working group was, at present, any resident can approach their ward councillor for a matter to be put on the council agenda. It goes on a bit more. So again, and this is a theme that will run through here, yes, but as long as the councillor controls everything. So there is no right for a citizen or a group of citizens to come together and raise an issue that the council would discuss. They don't actually have to agree with what you're proposing. All you're asking is for them to discuss it. They won't even allow you that. Remove requirement to address through the chair. I'm not a fan of pompousness, I'm sorry, it's not my thing. And if you go to a council meeting, you have to go, yes, Madam Chairman, or yes, Mr. Chairman, and stuff like that. Can we just not be grown-ups and just have a conversation with people? No. Apparently, it's important for an orderly meeting. That's just my personal thing. I know it doesn't appeal to other people. Insert a requirement for council to debate or ratify or reject motions voted on by the Portishead residents' meetings. These things here. There's actually no requirement for them to even look at them or consider them. What I asked for in my proposal was that everything you discuss at meetings like this tonight, they have no choice. It has to go for discussion. They could say, we don't like any of them, I'm sorry, we'll vote them all down, but at least they have to be discussed. Again, no. You can approach your local councillor and suggest that they put it on the agenda, but there should be no right for you to demand that. Change layout of council meetings. I don't know if all of you have been to a council meeting. One of the things I do in work is actually design spaces in a way that encourage debate. This isn't particularly great, but there's loads of us here. I said, change it, have tables, have people sitting around together, have ways where you can't really tell who's the councillor and who's the member of the public. It's about ideas and discussion. There's a theme here, no. It is impractical to discuss every issue with 26,000 people. That is why we have representative democracy. This suggestion would slow down the council's already overlong meetings. But the main problem would be how to ensure that the participants were representative of the residents as a whole, rather than a small group of self-selected activists. There's a great saying from one of my favourite television shows called The West Wing: decisions are made by people who turn up. And if you turn up, if you're a citizen, if you turned up here today, or if you turn up at a council meeting, then you are exercising your democratic right to be heard. And you should be heard. And I don't agree with that at all. And actually, the people of Frome don't agree with that either, and that's how they run their council meetings. Make it a standing order to live stream all public meetings of the council. Some members of the council thought this was a good idea. No change to standing orders would be required. There's 100 people in this room. I've just checked. Everybody wave and say hello to the 100 other people that are currently watching this. It's not difficult, and it's a way for people who can't be here tonight, for reasons that they can't get in the room, or for mobility issues or childcare issues, to take part in democracy. It's really, really simple to do. Why can't we do that? Councillors are required to acknowledge questions from the public within 2 weeks. The answer, that should be left to the councillor's discretion. Remove the chains of office for the chairman and deputy. That's just a personal thing, I know some people like them. No, they're useful indications of office, both at council meetings and outside. Add the requirement for councillors to publish a monthly list of their activities in the last month. This is not useful for parish councils. What North Somerset councils may do is a matter for them. Produce a requirement to produce an annual report. There is an annual report. Yeah, there is. It's really difficult to find. It's actually in the minutes of an annual council meeting. What I'm talking about is something that outlines the plans, objectives, and business plans for the council for its foreseeable year. Not just a verbal report that gets added, but apparently what they do now is sufficient. And my final one, a requirement to have a youth council with the ability to make recommendations. Apparently there is a youth council, but they just said no recent recommendations have been received from the youth council. Well, shouldn't there be more motivation to suggest maybe things like a budget and different ideas? These things are not revolutionary. These things are not anti-democratic. They're about having a conversation and creating an environment in this town. There is so much in this world at the moment that divides us. But I think at a local level, as a town, we can find a way to create conversations and work together. So what I ask you, I did say a lot, but if I hand this to Paul, if you like those ideas, we can run through them again. Please support them. They're not revolutionary, they're just ideas about having a conversation, and they're not party political. At a town level, we should look for the things that unite us, not divide us. Thank you very much.
Right, Jonathan Mock. Come on down.
Come on, Jonathan. Get in there.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jonathan Mock. I've lived in Portishead for 42 years and I'm a voter, and a Bloomsbury author as well. I thought I'd drop that in there. Is democracy dead in Portishead? Well, I'd say at the moment it's doing a good job of hastening its own demise. And you know, there's a reason why people refer to our town council as Jurassic Park. Now, Jurassic Park, the film, is actually very entertaining. It's one of my favourite films. Portishead Town Council is entertaining for all the wrong reasons. And if there's one word that I would bring up this year to explain our town council, it's embarrassing. Utterly embarrassing. I thought things would actually improve this year, but they went downhill very, very quickly when we got to the town meeting that lasted for a record 6 minutes. Not even the length of Bohemian Rhapsody. And given Portishead is a town which at the moment, I think it's fair to say, is being ripped apart by development. Development in this town has exceeded the town's ability to cope. And yet, what are they doing? They're still trying to cram more homes into this town. We have members who are town councillors and parish councillors who are cheerleading more development in this town. They're trying to sell it back to us as it's somehow going to be great because it's going to generate money for this town. I think Janet's presentation demonstrated that money is being generated for this town. Well, I'll come on to that in a second to kind of dovetail what Janet said. So we have a town which has overdevelopment, we have infrastructure problems. So what preoccupies our town council? Disenfranchising the electorate. Because they had 2 bungled attempts this year to introduce what are known as public spaces protection orders. Now, essentially, there's several things that PSPOs are supposed to do. They're supposed to discourage antisocial behaviour on council property. Now, I must have missed the kind of drug-fueled raves that take place in the folk hall. But one of the small print things about PSPOs is they can be used to exclude members of the public at town council meetings who are a little bit troublesome. So they had 2 attempts at doing that. Then they sent letters to residents on the basis of, I'm trying to think what the phrase is. Somebody help me, what's the phrase, Janet? Vexatious requests. Vexatious requests for information. Well, that went down like a lead balloon. So what was the next thing they decided to do? Change the standing orders so that suddenly members of the public can't raise things at meetings that they think are important. It has to go through the council. If it's not on the standing orders, you can't talk about it. Now, they're referring to something in the Local Government Act which is known as 3E. But 3E, it sounds like a telephone company, but there you go. 3E actually says model standing orders that are in bold type contain legal and statutory requirements. It's recommended that councils adopt them without changing them or their meaning. Model standing orders not in bold are designed to help councils operate effectively, but they do not contain statutory requirements, so they may be adopted and drafted or amended to suit a council's needs. 3E is not in bold. Therefore, it's a suggestion, not a binding guideline. But somehow this town council seems to think it's a binding guideline. They've got to change it. They've only changed it because it suits them. So, all the problems facing this town, and all they're doing is piddling around with the rules. Let's have a look at Portishead. As I said, development is outstripping the ability of this town to cope. And this town council is too slow to react to it. The world out there is changing. We are looking at losing, potentially, Old Mill Road, our industrial heartbeat to this town. And we could lose that to, well, they say it's going to be retail. You might get a cinema, you might get this, you might get that. We all know the end game is houses. Our green belt is under attack. Northwestern, which gets counted as part of Portishead, even though as a kind of like a more veteran resident, I still think of it as a separate village, but they're looking at losing one of their green spaces right next to a site of scientific interest. We have Slade Road Field. Well, there's a story behind Slade Road Field, it's quite incredible. Slade Road Field, they want to cram 20 houses in there, where the only access to Slade Road Field will be downside. So if you live on downside, look forward to all this extra traffic. Bristol Road, talk about development of the green belt of Bristol Road. You have this situation where all these things are happening, and you have residents who want to ask questions about what is going on. But the way our town council meetings are structured, you're not allowed to do that. Now, I'll give you 2 examples recently of where the rules did not work to the benefit of this town. One of them was at the end of last year. We had a presentation about the widening of Wyndham Way. Now, a nice man from North Somerset Council came down and he showed us his traffic flow animations. It was wonderful. All the traffic coming off the Portbury Hundreds, coming off the Gordena roundabout, the Portbury Hundreds, was all merging one by one from 2 lanes. It was a magic act that Paul Daniels would have been proud of. He asked that, he gave his presentation. Councillors were allowed to ask questions, but members of the public, you must sit there and be quiet. Speak when you are spoken to. Well, for goodness sake, I'm 50, and I come to these town council meetings, I feel like I'm 5 again. Crucial questions were missed. You put your hand up in the air to say, well, can somebody please ask this question? I'm sorry, public participation has ended, you will remain quiet. So something can actually go through a town council meeting that can have long-term negative effects for this town, but because the question wasn't asked at the time, because members of the public are told, you must be quiet, these things happen. The other one, recently, was when we had a presentation about the lake grounds. The jewel in the mud, jewel in the crown, sorry. An asset in Portishead that must be saved from a skate park. But apart from that, North Somerset Council's thinks of a legally litigious word, not like negligence, but something like it. Just their indifference towards the lake grounds. Then we've ended up with, well, a swamp that would fit into Jurassic Park quite nicely. So somebody from the North Somerset Council comes down. Questions are asked. I wanted to ask the question that if North Somerset Council can't afford to maintain the lake grounds, do the dredge of the lake grounds, where are they going to find the money for Portbury Wharf Nature Reserve? But I wasn't allowed to ask the question because public participation was over and you must remain quiet. For goodness sake, this is 2018 and this is like living in some kind of medieval serfdom. So key questions don't get asked because of the rules. And then we have councillors. I've actually got written down here, councillors failing in their duties. That probably is a bit litigious, but there you go. Councillors who are slow in their duties, perhaps. Refusing to be held accountable to the scrutiny appropriate to their office. Now, I've asked questions of councillors. And as soon as you get to the point where you say, yeah, but actually, this is the question that needs to be asked, they go quiet. I think the expression is, they go dark. You don't get any answers out of them. I had an interesting correspondence with the North Somerset Council ward councillor for the lake grounds, who, she kind of went off on several non sequiturs and accused me of talking down all the people who do volunteer work in Portishead. I can't remember where I actually said that, because she seemed to conflate criticism of the town council with criticism of people who do volunteer work. Anyway, I asked questions about that. It came round to the same question, actually. If North Somerset Council can't afford to maintain the lake grounds, then how are they going to find the money for the nature reserve? No response, nothing. I actually followed up with a couple of extra emails, nothing. Anyway, that's a ward councillor, that's a district councillor, but it's the same with the town councillors. Councillor Pasley, the man who actually signed off the Portbury Wharf Nature Reserve deal. It's got his signature on it, literally. his name on it. I ask him questions about it, he gives me the, nothing to do with me, Gov. You need to talk to Nigel Ashton. Nigel Ashton. The lesser spotted Ashton. Teflonicus nigelis. Or the ghost, as Ken calls him. Or write to Port Marine Management Limited. Well, Port Marine Management Limited, who's that? Nigel Ashton.
And Arthur Terry.
Yeah, and Arthur, yeah, poor old Arthur. So, you try and hold councillors to account, but they're not interested. Janet's problems that she had with the Section 106 money, we shouldn't be having this battle to find out where the money is being spent. It should be the duty of councillors to make sure that Section 106 money is accountable. Instead, they sit there with these blank, uncomprehending looks on their faces, as if we're asking them to transcribe something in Mandarin. But this is our money. This is why we've had the town ripped up. It's generated this money. We don't know what's going on. If we don't know what's going on, councillors, that is a clear indication there is a failing on your part.
Surely the answer is to get rid of them all, isn't it?
Have you been reading my notes? And it's just, Portishead is full of things like that. The skate park, we all know about the skate park. It was killed off for political reasons, actually for the sake of party unity. Anyway, so then we come to technology. Now, about 2 years ago, I actually said, look, this town council needs to embrace social media. You need to get on Facebook, you need to get on Twitter. They'd have a think about it. They set up a working committee. One councillor I seem to remember said, well, I don't use social media, so therefore I don't think a lot of other people use social media. We've got a Twitter feed now. Rather confusingly, there are two. One is the official Portishead Town Council Twitter feed. Another one is a spoof one. The spoof one actually has more followers. It's rather embarrassing. But yeah, we're live streaming tonight, this meeting. Why can't we do that all the time? Why can't we have a Facebook and a Twitter feed? Or why can't we have a Facebook feed for this town council? It's not rocket science. And I have friends who work with rockets, and they tell me it's not rocket science. We have, now get this, we have 3 Portishead town councillors who are not contactable by email. This is 2018, isn't it? Just checking. They have freely available portishead.gov.uk email addresses to use, but they choose not to use them. They prefer people to write via the carrier pigeon or phone them on the telephonic device. I don't know, I like to send an email by kind of going on my iPhone, click gone, go and make a cup of tea. That's the way the world moves now. And that's the way a council should be in tune with. Not resisting it, not standing there like King Canute demanding the waves retreat. As I said, I wish I could say I was angry at all this. But I'm embarrassed. This is 2018 for crying out loud. And that some of the councillors, some of them even here tonight, will be seeking re-election. And the fact that this meeting has been called is a damning indictment of their capability and their credibility. If they're not going to embrace change, and we're not talking about revolution, we're not talking about the comrades storming the folk hall and lining them all out the back, we're talking about evolution, we're talking about small, simple changes to bring things into line, to bring Portishead Town Council into line with the world that exists outside the folk hall. And I think that's part of the problem sometimes, is that they don't realise that there is a world out there, that the things that happen here resonate out there in the real world. It's not an era where things that happened in the folk hall stayed in the folk hall. We have the technology now to share all that. And yes, the meeting should be live streamed. So if they're not prepared to embrace change, step aside. Really.
Yes.
What use and what help are you to the town when we have a meeting like tonight because of what has happened in this town? As I said, I like Jurassic Park. It's a great film. The sequels, not quite so. But we shouldn't be having this conversation in 2018. And I sincerely hope we're not going to have this conversation after 2019.
No, that's true.
Sarah Jackson.
Hello, my name is Sarah. I've lived in Portishead for nearly 12 years. I am a registered person to vote. I live up in Redcliffe Bay, if anybody wants to know. I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but I just thought I would bring, like we're trying to bring today, a sense of positivity to what we're trying to do. I was just really impressed by the amount of people that have turned up tonight, and it'd be really good to kind of try and pull this potential together. So my thing is, I've had a bit of a break in dealing with the town council. Some of you might know me from about 3 or 4 years ago as the Lake Grounds play equipment woman, as I'm still referred to sometimes in Waitrose. And I with a band of merry Portishead residents, eventually managed to get the new lot of play equipment up at the Lake Grounds, and it was a really good exercise. I really enjoyed it. I met loads of people. I know a lot of people now that I wouldn't have met before by doing that, and I think it's brought something to the Lake Grounds. And my kids, I've got an age gap, and we wanted to keep the older one happy while the younger one was playing, and I think it worked out quite well. But that was 18 months of my life arguing with half the town council, not all, some were very supportive actually. You find out which ones actually like to get things done. And it kind of opened my eyes to the town council and how it works, or more accurately, how I don't think it does work. And I was hoping that by having, I came along to lots of planning and rec and work meetings and all these, a whole new world that was opened up to me when I had to come and do presentations and be sort of besmirched and spoken to like I wasn't very clever and that I didn't know how things worked. So just be quiet, young lady, and just sit down and don't say too much more. No, that's not how it works, I'm afraid. I have a background, I have a mixed background. I'm a researcher by trade. I think, funnily enough, people in this room, some of these people have got lives outside of the town council where we do things and we know things and we talk to people and we get things going, and that's what we do. I know, can you believe it? So I'm a researcher.
I've lived here all my life.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're a very active member. You're here tonight, well done for coming, good. And so am I, and so are a lot of us. But I'm a researcher, I'm a project manager, and I work generally across the academic, voluntary sector and public sectors, so I kind of span a lot of areas. And the one thing that I have learned from all that is the underlying thing that I'm picking up on what people are saying tonight is consultation. That's the word I learned when I became a researcher. That's a posh word for basically asking people what they think about stuff. That's what it's all about. And you can use any words you like, but when it comes down to it, what we need to know is what people think. Now, in the Lake Grounds campaign that we did a survey. We didn't do a petition. It wasn't about getting sort of stroppy and grumpy. It was about finding out what people wanted. I work on evidence. That's my job, and that's what I bring to this. I don't know any other way of doing it. And I did a survey, and at the time, we got a response rate of something like, I don't know, 1,100 people in the end by using Facebook groups and paper questionnaires and mixed media and talking to people and writing stuff down for people that didn't want to fill in questionnaires, because that's how you do it, different ways for different people. We got a response rate that was a similar response rate proportionally to the biannual North Somerset Council survey that they do. So we got a lot of people responding. 75% of those people wanted play equipment at the Lake Grounds. 25% of people didn't at that point want it. Well, again, referring back to democracy, that meant that the majority of people wanted it, had put their voices forward, had made themselves heard, so we had to do it. Then I kind of thought, great, we're learning, and you skip forward until the parish poll on the skate park, and I wasn't involved in the skate park, I kind of left that to other people who knew more about skate parks, it's not my thing. But you have a parish poll where you ask people what they think, they make their voices heard, you get a majority, and nothing got done about it. And I got really cross, because that's not what we're like in Portishead. I moved here because it's a great community, it's a fantastic place for my kids to grow up, and I do not want to be embarrassed when I go to work in central Bristol like I do 3 times a week, because I have to, because there's no work here for me. I go to Bristol, and it's embarrassing to say you're from Portishead at the moment. It's not where do you live, it's when do you live. I live in the 19th century apparently. I'm sorry, it's just not good enough. So, bringing it back to the positive, with my experience, but also the experience of everybody else in this room, but also all the other residents of Portishead, I just want to say there's a lot of potential. There's so many people, so many of us know so many things. I have offered on numerous occasions, as has other people, to actually work with the town council on some kind of working group or whatever it is, to get a town plan together, to get a town vision together, to help run facilitation sessions, engagement sessions, planning sessions. I have a PhD in business planning, right? That's just my background. I know how to put together a business plan. I don't know everything, that's shared amongst us. We all have a different approach. But what I'm saying is, we are offering, why aren't you listening? It's not about us trying to tell you that we don't like you or that we don't like what you're doing. We all always disagree. It's about opening up, admitting when you don't know everything, and there are people around that can fill in those gaps. Let us do it for you. Let us do it with you. That's engagement and consultation. That is 21st century process, 21st century governance for a 21st century forward-looking town. Thank you.
Annette, would you like to come up?
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
Is the purpose of this meeting to just listen to what everyone has to say, or are we actually going to get an opportunity to discuss the things that people are saying and make some sort of decision as to how we take all these things forward?
My understanding is that the main points are being put on this board here, and then at the end of the meeting we will discuss it and there'll be a motion.
Yes, so towards the end of the meeting we'll kind of bring them together in a set of motions. I mean, there's been 1 or 2 already. So if you want to say something towards the end that's not been covered that you're concerned about, we'll sweep it up and then we'll take them to the formal council meeting next time round. Okay.
Which we've all been told that they can just ignore if we want to.
Well, they have up to now, but there's a lot of people here today, so maybe they'll start listening.
Hello, I'm Annette Hennessy, and I'm probably best known as the person who drives that car with a sign that says Portishead is the best town in the world, except for its politics. But I must correct the press and some other voices that have been around the town regarding what happened at one of the last meetings. The matters to be raised at town council meetings about agenda items was not changed. What it did say originally was that meetings shall be open to the public unless their presence is prejudicial to the public interest. It also said that the people could talk on items. Sorry, I'm just looking. Oh, sorry, I've gone to the wrong one. Sorry, I do apologise. It's easier to start from the reverse. What the standing orders now says is that members of the public may make representations, answer questions, and give evidence at a meeting which they are entitled to attend in respect of the business on the agenda. That's what's on the standing orders now. That's what was also on the standing orders previously. So that hadn't changed. What has been taken out was this sentence: public participation is limited to residents, business ratepayers, electors of the town and all councillors representing a Portishead ward, and shall be in respect of any matter in relation to which the council has powers or duties and which concern the town or its inhabitants. So when democracy did die in this town, and it actually died on the 9th of May, which I'll come on to in a moment, it was more to do with the inflexibility of Portishead Town Council. So in the past, they have allowed people to talk on matters that were not in the power of this town council. And that's important. If we've got questions to raise about our town that's really important to us, we should be able to raise them. What is probably more frustrating is that despite telling the public that they couldn't raise items on the agenda, that weren't on the agenda, the town councillors then sit there and discuss items that they're not within their power. So there seems to be one rule for the public and one rule for the town councillors, and that is what is causing consternation at town council meetings. And Mr. Hardman, who spoke earlier, is absolutely correct. We were told that we could speak on items not on the agenda previously, and at a Rec and Works meeting we were then stopped from speaking. And I think I can only say that's because they don't want what we've got to say raised in a public meeting that is now broadcast on social media. But silencing us about issues that are important to Portishead is not good enough. We should be able to still speak about them. And this is not about councillor bashing, because I think we've got some very good councillors, and I can see a couple of them at the back of the hall. We've got good councillors, but sadly we've also got councillors who don't want to listen to the public anymore. Perhaps because the things that those people are raising are highlighting concerns that they should have done something about and haven't done. So I just want to correct that. And in fact, even in the press, I think last Wednesday, it still wasn't correct. So if we expect them, the councillors, to tell the truth, then we've also got to highlight what are the facts. And it's also important for people here that to move forward, we've got to know what's right and what's wrong, and what's allowed and what's not allowed. Because if we don't know those things, then we can't move forward, and we can't implement some of the things that some of you want to actually see in your town. So, standing orders are guidance only. They're not legislative. So in other words, in the past, they've had standing orders, but they've been flexible. They've allowed people to talk. Just recently, they've allowed some people to talk on issues relating to the town, and then they've stopped other people because they may have information that's going to make the councillors look a little bit embarrassed. Well, sorry, that is life. You know, you've got to, if you choose to be a councillor, at some point you're going to have to put up your hand and say, well, yes, I should have done something about that. So if they relax standing orders, then it doesn't mean they're going to have the police coming to the door. In fact, what they've done to residents when we've held them to account, they've called the police on us. And in fact, one councillor was sat in the meeting after he'd been sent some facts in a document by a resident who sat here tonight. He refused to listen to the evidence, refused to look at the facts, and then proceeded to give a lot of misleading and false information to the meeting. And in fact, when I did say, well, hang on a minute, you can't give false information to the public of Portishead, they then called the police. And so that's the sort of thing that we're having to deal with. Our police shouldn't be running around chasing the councillors and checking whether they're telling the truth or not. It's just crazy. Going back to the flexibility, so they have allowed flexibility, and that's what I can only propose for the future, that we do have some flexibility. That doesn't mean to say that you can have someone standing up and talking for 30 minutes on their own on one particular given issue, because that's obviously not going to be very productive when you've got lots of matters to discuss. And in that sort of vein, I agree with the town council. You have got to have some sort of restriction, but you've got to be flexible. And why are the town councils allowed to relax their standing orders to suit them, but they won't allow the public to do so? And what was even more worrying about the Rec and Works meeting, where people were stopped from speaking, was at the end of the meeting, the chair of that Rec and Works Committee agreed, as Mr Hardman said, to allow those residents to put some items on that were important. Pill Park, the skate park, ones that Jeff Hardman's already mentioned. And because the residents had information that actually might have been quite crucial to future discussions on those items. Pill Park was one of them. Yet when it came to the end of that meeting where she agreed to do it, at the next full council meeting, they agreed not to have those items from the residents. It's just unbelievable that this is going on in Portishead, as sort of the second largest town in North Somerset, and we've got councillors dictating to other councillors what they're going to allow the public to talk about. And to be fair to Arthur Terry, although he's not my favourite councillor, he did actually raise at the last meeting that it's the chairman of a committee that decides who can talk about what, and that the chairman makes the final decision, not the rest of his colleagues at a full council meeting. That's not how it works. So we've got to have fairness, we've got to have councillors who are not biased in any way. And that brings me on to the 9th of May. And I think, without going into huge details over it, we have now established that the meeting on the 9th of May, which many of you may have attended, was cancelled unlawfully. It was closed by Leslie Cottrell unlawfully. And it now transpires she wasn't even acting as a councillor. She was acting as an elector, a resident of the town, yet she refused to let anybody else in that meeting talk. She definitely refused to let the gentleman who thought that an independent chairman may be important, she refused to let him talk. And if they come to a parish meeting, if we've got councillors here today, if they say anything that's misleading, false, and confuses the situation, they cannot be held to account if they're talking and they've got the councillor title. And we know that because we went to the monitoring officer of North Somerset Council after the closure of the 9th of May meeting, and he said that he cannot hold them to account because they were there as residents. Now, Leslie Cottrell had her chain of office on. She gave the impression to people of this town that she was a councillor and that she had jurisdiction. She had jurisdiction to chair the meeting, nobody was actually doubting that, but she did not have the jurisdiction to stop other electors from talking. She had no jurisdiction to close the meeting, and in fact she still hasn't answered the questions, and neither has the chairman, Peter Mitchell. We are still waiting for questions to be answered about the closure of that meeting. And the only thing I would say from tonight is that moving forward, an independent chair like Nick Goff, as we got tonight, to me is good. It's got to be the way forward. If we don't have an independent chair, the party political line can always influence decisions poorly in our town. And we've seen that. We saw that on Pill Park recently. Now, I was all in favour of a boat storage unit, but I wasn't in favour of them putting it up without the public consultation that they promised this town. So Pill Park, we were promised by Russ Curry of North Somerset Council that the residents of Portishead they'd have a choice and a decision on that, what went there, the storage unit, and what happened to the foreshore. He even said that there'd be a consultation and display in Parish Wharf Leisure Centre. But come the time that they're going to spend that Section 106 money, they decided to have no consultation except with some small minority groups who are going to use the water. Well, that's not what we were promised. And so as residents, if we're promised a consultation, then we should be given that consultation. So you can be in favour or not, you know, I think a good debate is all about whether we agree or disagree. We can't all agree with people, but we should be able to debate it reasonably, and we should be given fair chance to speak about matters. And so going forward, I think we have got to talk about things like that. We can't be stopped from talking in meetings because one councillor doesn't want it highlighted. And in fact, just so people know, on the Pill Park, that land was open public space. The original boat storage place that was originally planned it did need planning permission. The one that is there now does not need planning permission, although it looks remarkably like Portishead Zoo at the moment with the black fencing round and no roof. However, it's public open space, and as such, it should have had a change of use or applied for change of use. Now, we're now told it doesn't need change of use. Well, that's really strange, because to change public open space and put a structure there, I'm afraid, you know, they should have at least applied for it. And in fact, North Somerset Council agreed that they should have applied for it. It was only when a resident raised the problem with them that they suddenly had to backtrack. So it's about making sure that we're all consulted, new and old residents. And I think what they forget is that there are people who've moved into this town who don't know the history of Portishead. So some of us know some topics back to front, but other people don't. And so when plans change, then we should all have the right to talk about them and have a free right to democratic decision making. And so going forward, I think I'm not a member of any independents, and I just feel that having seen what politics has done to Portishead, we now need to go forward with an independent mind. And that doesn't mean to say that councillors should be one thing or another, but surely to be fair, to have no bias against any subject, to have no party political line, has got to be good for our town, because we do live in the best town in the world. I think Portishead is a wonderful town, and having seen some awful conversations on a social media site, Hello Portishead, tonight, I'm staggered by how people treat each other in this town. Everybody should have a right to discuss things. You may not always agree, but having sat in these meetings for many a year and seen some of the appalling things that the councillors have said to members of the public, that is the thing I think we should stop. And so I just think, to round up, I'd just like to say, to move forward in whatever discussions and whatever plans people make, surely at our meetings, our electors' meetings, which don't stop councillors coming along. If a councillor comes along in their own right, it's very sad that the two councillors who didn't turn up chose not to. They could have actually come here in their own right and sat as a resident. They chose not to, which speaks volumes in my book. But I think that I would like to propose that at our electors' meeting, that we do have an independent chair. And in fact, Nick Goff was the gentleman who one of the residents was going to propose for the meeting on the 9th of May. But sadly, he was shouted down by the very person who had no jurisdiction to do so. And what also happened was on the 30th of May, when our meeting was reconvened, the chairman there displayed several times his bias, I think. He was not impartial, and I think that that didn't help things either. So I would like to propose tonight, and it's up to people whether they vote on it or not, that in future electors' meetings we have an independent chair. Because to me, having somebody who is not tied into any political party and allows people to talk, surely has got to be a good thing for our town. I can't understand anybody who feels that that is not a good thing to do. And I know there's one gentleman here tonight who sees council meetings as his House of Parliament. And he has said it many times, and I don't mind saying his name, Mr. Smith. And he comes to many meetings, and yes, it is his House of Commons. He likes to come to meetings, but surely he also wants fairness, and we haven't seen fairness in Portishead at meetings recently. We've been stopped from speaking, and how can that be? You've got to have some sort of restrictions on time, that's obvious, but you can't be stopped from speaking on items that the councillor then goes on to talk about. And there are numerous examples, like Pill Park, Portbury Wharf Nature Reserve. There are hundreds of examples. And the skate park, I can't begin to tell you the appalling written evidence I could show you on the skate park. And that's why we haven't got a skate park now, because of political interference. So I would like to end by proposing that our electors' meetings, our Portishead residents' annual meeting, is chaired by an independent person. And that's the proposal I've got.
Yep.
So there is a proposal on the table that all Portishead resident meetings are chaired by an independent chair. Would you like to vote on that? Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Anyone against that motion? No. Okay, thank you very much. Right, next, Paul Gardner, Community and Neighbourhood Plans.
Thanks, Nick.
Chairman,
Thanks.
before we move on to democracy, do I say a few words?
Yeah, please. You want to come to the front, John?
Might need to see.
Do you want to sit down, John? Or you
Thank you. John Clark, resident here since 1975. Back in 1970, before I had the common sense to move to Portishead, I lived in a rural district in Hampshire. One night, two neighbours and myself attended a council meeting, the only public there. Under any other business, the chairman announced the allotments had been sold and the money would be used to give all business ratepayers a payment holiday. Nothing for the residents. Nothing in the public domain about it. It's antics like this, which means that it's essential that the town council can only discuss matters which have been put in the public domain by agenda. Otherwise, they will sneak things past you. This presents a problem, as residents must be able to raise with councillors any matters of concern to them. We have to find a way of fulfilling both duties. I'm not getting bound up with only one. I'm putting a motion to the next town council along these lines. In future, before the town council meetings take place, there will be an opportunity for members of the public to address the council on any matter of concern. The clerk will take notes and the proceedings will be recorded, but these remarks will not be part of the minutes of the meeting. At the end of this period, the formal meeting of the council will commence, following the agenda. At an early point in the agenda, residents may contribute to the meeting any thoughts on agenda items. These will be recorded in the agenda. What I'm asking is, we must find some way of meeting both our responsibilities. In the past, this has been met, frankly, by fudging it, by ignoring the fact that this rule about agenda items exists. Well, I'm trying to be nice to people tonight. A Conservative councillor said to me last week, we can't ignore standing orders because you can't trust all of us to do so. So we need a formal way of the public speaking without it being part of standing orders. This will be the proposal I put to the town council. I was really interested to see what people think. Thank you. feet, right? All right. I spent some house and
Mind the tripod.
Hi everyone. Again, Paul Gardner. I just want to talk a little bit about community and neighbourhood planning, which picks up on what Sarah was talking about just now. So obviously the issue is we just need people in the town to be talking with the councillors and there to be a dialogue and exchange of views, and we know that everyone can't agree on everything. So, yeah, well, what do other towns do? What do other businesses do? What do people here who work in community groups, charities do? Well, if you've got a bunch of customers or residents, you basically ask them what they want, and you have a discussion. There's some things you can do for them, some things you can't, some things they can't afford, whatever it might be. But it's all about communication. So how would this work in local government? What do other towns do? So first of all, let's find out what people want. Here's a community survey, which was kind of given to me by Pat, who's sitting over there. This is a community survey from Shirehampton, not that far away. Luckily, a few weeks ago I was in Bristol at a planning meeting, and I met the lady who put this survey together. She's called Nash Bierman, and she's a really fantastic lady. And I said, well, how's the survey? There's about 80 questions. It asks you for your opinion on planning, sports facilities, well-being, thriving high street, our neighbourhood, all things obviously equal importance to Portishead. And it was hand-delivered by volunteers to everyone in Shirehampton. So there was about a 15% return, so there were a couple of thousand or so responses, and she said it's fantastic because we now know what the priorities are for Shirehampton. So rather than people turning up council meetings with point issues, we've got the data. All right, so that's the first thing. Let's have some data. So, and doesn't that sound that hard to do, does it? I'm sure we could do that in Portishead. Secondly, so what should we do with this survey? Luckily, there was some legislation put in place in 2011 by a Conservative government led by some guy called David Cameron. Some people might remember. I've heard of him for a while. I think he's somewhere in Europe, but who knows. Anyway, so there was some legislation around neighbourhood plans which encouraged councils to put together a neighbourhood plan, and basically this is a bit of a technical document, but it sort of, if you imagine a town like Portishead, it will say in these parts of the town we'll have development, in these parts this is where we have amenities for kids or whatever it might be, and this is a green space, wild space, or whatever it might be. So you can put a plan together, and you can get a planning consultant, but essentially you get it done with the townspeople. And here's a couple of examples. Particularly like this one is from Buckfastleigh in Devon, and as you can see it was done in conjunction with the school children of Buckfastleigh. And so they have a neighbourhood plan, and it says, besides some technical advice from a planning consultant, these are bottom-up plans advised by local people who have in turn consulted widely with neighbours and those who have lived and worked in the town, young and old. And here's another one from Claverham, which is a lot closer to us. They have a neighbourhood plan which was signed off in a referendum last year, and again it was done in the same thing, basically with consultation with the community, so everyone knows what they want for the town, priorities. Now I should say it's not a binding document, so it's not going to stop a block of flats being built outside your front door, but it is an advisory document, and the planning people and developers have to take note of it, but it sets out the aspirations for the town. So in North Somerset, Blackwell has one, Claverham has one, Long Ashton has one, and plans are being prepared according to the North Somerset website in Bleedon, Churchill, Claverham, Conisbury, Winscombe, Brington, Yatton, Portbury, Clevedon and Pearl. Anyone spot a town that hasn't?
Be honest, Mr. Gardner, you do know the process is just starting in Portishead.
It's just starting, but it's not on the North Somerset website.
That's a town vision, not a neighbourhood plan.
And
just before an election, convenient.
as Mr. Mitchell knows, it's just a town vision, it's not a binding plan. Now, of course, sounds great, doesn't it? So So this ties in with what Janet was saying earlier, because basically, so the town council here has had 7 years to work on this. This is a legislation put in by a Conservative government. They've had 7 years to do something. Now we're coming to an election, they get worried about losing. There's somebody decided that they might like a vision, which is worth nothing. They basically paid a consultant £3,000 to write a report which tells us all the issues we knew in the first place. Fantastic. Now, because we haven't got a neighbourhood plan, it's costing us a lot of money. So the legislation, basically that came in January 2018, if you have a neighbourhood plan, for every £100 that a developer has to pay for the development and for the money going to the town, which Janet explained, 25% of it has to come to Portishead, or comes to the local. Yeah, so 25% of the money from developers has to come to the town if it has a neighbourhood plan. Right, so for every £100, the local town must get £25, and that's automatic. If you don't have a neighbourhood plan, the rules say you only receive 15% of the money instead of 25%. So for every £100 of developer money that should be coming to Portishead, because we haven't got a neighbourhood plan, we're losing £10. Okay? So because the council has done nothing for the last 7 years, it's costing us all money. They'll also then tell you there's no money to spend cleaning up lake grounds. There's no money to spend on this, there's no money to spending on that. Because they haven't done their job properly, we're losing it. Okay. So, the way to get around that and to move forward quickly is to get the town together, build a community plan, and if they don't do it, why don't we do it? I'm sure to the people in Portishead, the community have, we can do that together. Okay, thank you very much. Do you want to pull that together?
Yeah. It's almost like Paul and I planned this. No, it's not. Someone asked a question earlier, which I think is really useful, about how we actually move this forward. We've heard a lot of really positive things tonight.
Is this a part of political broadcast for the independents tonight? You've had 5 speakers from the independents. Give somebody else a chance.
Come on then.
Ken.
Come on, Ken. Come on, Ken. I'll be back. Come on, Ken.
There's only been 3 now.
Are you happy to? You were speaking.
I was speaking, but in the spirit of I'm quite happy.
Sure.
Yes. Okay. As long as Ken is nice, please be nice, Ken. Please, I'm begging. No comrade jokes.
And that's where I came in.
Ken, can you introduce yourself so the lady taking the minutes can...
Ken Smith, I am
make a point before he starts.
Okay. I'm in trouble before I start.
My name is Jenny Perry and I'm an elector in this parish. Mr Smith said the only people who've spoken this evening are members of Portishead Independence Party. My husband and I stood there at the door and asked every single person who came in, would they like to speak? So everybody here has been given the opportunity to speak. If they've chosen not to take that opportunity, that's their problem, not Portishead Independence problem, parish council problem, not anybody else's problem. Thank you.
I wouldn't speak normally at a meeting like this because there have been so many independents speaking, and I just don't know what they're talking about. They know what I mean. Parish council.
Who are you speaking on behalf of then?
Nobody.
Speaking independently then, aren't you?
As a resident, yes, like the rest of us. I'm a resident.
All right, let's put it this way then. Unlike them, I am not standing for election next year.
Neither am I. No, that's not fair.
Come on, boys. You're riding behind the bush. What's wrong with you? You know you're standing for election.
Yeah, but you're saying I was. I'm not.
I'm
Not with
not.
Sarah, so you retract that, Ken. You retract that.
I know Annette's not standing because she's a personal friend of mine, but all right, I'm sorry for saying you're not. It's a pity because you're the best speaker amongst them. Well, let's get down to all honesty, basically. Parish councils. What are they? They're the bottom of the chain. Right down at the bottom of the food part. All they're responsible for is...
Can you speak up, please?
All they're responsible for is bus shelters, making sure they're painted blue. Bristol Road football ground. The youth club. The toilets in Wyndham Way. And some grants at the end and out. Most of the responsibility in this town belongs to North Somerset. It's as simple as that. All the development that's been done in this town is instigated in North Somerset. I've known this council vote against developments, but guess what? They get down Western and it's agreed. Why is it agreed down Western? Simple. No, nothing to do with Conservative. If I lived in Nailsea, or I lived in Clevedon, or I lived in Clavering, all the people I've represented on that committee, and somebody wanted to build in Portishead, which way would you vote? My hand would go up like that. Of course it would, because if they get more building in Portishead, there ain't no more building in Clevedon. And that's how it works. And it's a constant castigate these councillors here. You had a chance to vote for them 3 years ago, and they're here by right. Especially the one they dislike most, who's Cameron. They don't like him very much. But he printed a manifesto, and he told you exactly what he was going to do, and people voted him in. That's democracy. There's no democracy here, but that's democracy. The people you vote for come down here and try their best under all kinds of problems, because they've got no power. I come down here and complain about North Somerset because there's 4 of them that they're actually go down North Somerset to their meetings, and hopefully we get our voice heard. You know, we have had 12 years of austerity. I don't know if you've noticed anybody in here, but we have. Portishead hasn't really noticed it. Come to my town in Blackburn and you will have noticed it, okay? So we haven't really noticed it.
That's the people who go to food banks. Keep to the point. That's not relevant. What's your point then?
My point is, I think to constantly criticise councillors over and over again, it's wearing a bit thin.
Fair enough.
No. It's not easy to be a councillor. I find them most approachable. These people want to sit in circles and talk and talk and talk and talk even more till eventually we'll get a decision, and they'll go before the inspector, and the inspector said, get lost, I'm not having it, and guess what, we have to pay for that advice. They talk about Froome like it's the Holy Grail. The precept's been put up for the last 5 years in Froome. They've got no
council tax.
Pardon?
So it's the council tax.
That's what I'm on about. Don't you know what the precept is? I've told you it's the council tax.
No, I said and the council tax.
And the council tax. But that's Trowbridge, that's not Froome. Let's be fair. So I can only tell you that Froome put up the precept. That's the bit the council use, the local council, the parish council. They put it up for the last 5 years, and you talk about it like it's Shangri-La. So...
And?
I thought that's what we wanted. Don't we want money from our town to be spent in our town?
It's gone down by £10 in this town in the last 10 years.
What did you say we were researchers? Government research you said, did you? Something like that, so that's what, 40 grand, great. No problem.
I wish, matey, I wish.
I think you work for the state, did you?
No, of course I don't work for the state. How dare you?
All right, I'll take it back then. But basically, every time I see something that the comrades do, it's always to criticise the council.
The comrades? What do you want? What do you want?
You're not relevant to this discussion.
What do you want? What's your point then?
Is that right?
You're not, really you're not.
Well, I live in Portishead. Am I allowed to have my say?
You have
Are you saying like I've got to shut up and criticise independence?
Give us your suggestions.
But what do you want?
My positive suggestion is to try and distable
North Somerset, where the power is. That's what we need to do.
Right,
But that lot are not the way to do it.
That's your opinion. That's your opinion. Your destabilisation, you're spot on.
That's a comrade thing to do.
But your local, your regular council's not going to do that. They're on there. They're talking to
How do we do it
They're
then?
not doing it.
How do we destabilise it then?
This lady here, you've got a comment to make?
Only if Ken will allow me to, because obviously I need the microphone so people can hear me, only if Ken will allow me to just respond just a little bit.
Yeah, come on up.
I see you've got all them turned out for you then. Good job.
I'm here as a resident. Ken, you don't have to walk away, I was just going to respond to you, and then you can carry on if you want, if you've got more you want to say.
No,
I just wanted to... That wasn't me, Ken. That wasn't me.
Nice lady from Sutton.
Ken, all I was going to say was, you talk about North Somerset, a number, as far as I'm aware, a number of the Porter's independent candidates are also standing in North Somerset. So their plan is to do exactly what you said, and to try and make North Somerset a much more independent council, as well as the town council. That's all I was going to say, just to clarify that for you.
Excuse me, could I ask, as it's 9:10, have any more people put their name down to ask a question?
There is one other person who would like to speak.
Did you want to speak, madam?
Do we not need to go back to the agenda?
How long are you going to be, Kerita?
I had a proposal to wrap it up, so if there's someone else who wants to speak, let them speak.
So is Val Wills here? Val, would you like to come up?
I am Val Wills. I am a Portishead. I have a special needs son. Yeah. I have a special needs son. There are several people here that have special children. When we have brought things to Portishead Council, we have been told that it is not anything to do with Portishead, it's got to go to North Somerset. We have got a councillor who I'm not going to name tonight that has been very, very helpful. Chris Sperrin and I have tried to set up somewhere so our older children, 18 and over, are not, when North Somerset decide to take their money away that they need to be either taken out because they need to be chaperoned or anything like that. Their money is now being taken away, not from Portishead, but these children, I shouldn't call them children, they are young adults. They are able to vote in Portishead, but their voice is not being heard. We run a disco, voluntary, once a month in this hall. We have to pay full price for the hire of the hall. We have to pay £60 for the disco to come. We approached North Somerset Council and asked Portishead Council if we could have a little bit of leeway. You know, we're not doing it to line our boots. We're doing it so our kids are not stuck or whatever North Somerset think we should do with them. I think that personally they think that you put them in a cupboard under the stairs because there's nothing going on in Portishead, and if they're not at college or they're not at further adult education, what do you do with these young people? They have to be chaperoned. When I came here to speak about my son, Chris bundled me out the door and my daughter spoke. I was told to sit down and shut up. It was not a Portishead, it was North Somerset Council. As I am not allowed to speak to North Somerset SEN because all the alarm bells come out when Mrs. Wills phones me, I have to approach them by email. But please, these are young residents of Portishead. They are putting them out in the community. My son is now, he has been granted some money to help him in his life. He is 21. At the beginning, on the 16th of November, they are coming to my house to see why they are going to take the money that they've allocated for him to go to clubs and everything else. These are young people that live in Portishead that need our help, but it is governed by North Somerset. And all we are asking, they are part of our community and we would like your support. We have been to numerous council meetings. I usually come with a minder that's sat over there because I'm not allowed out on my own because I can be very rude. And I'm just asking that if we're going to pull this all together, don't leave our young people out. They have so much to give. Sorry, lady over here. What I want to propose is that we all pull together for the benefit of this town, but don't isolate our special young people because they can teach you so much.
Very quickly, I know what Barry's talking about. They are charged full price for the evening, for their Friday evening, and they have to pay £60 for the disco. And I think that any council should be offering them a grant. I also know that they're quite happy if people come along and join in and bring things for the children to eat, like biscuits and sweets. Is that right, Val?
It is right, but please don't call them children.
Sorry, it's young people. I apologise, you're quite right.
Very, very
I think if I can just put some clarification.
So I think it's important that a fair council would offer these people a grant.
I was definitely not expecting to speak. Just to back up everything that Val said, but in essence...
Could you just tell us who you are? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Chris Ferry. Do you want the MBE bit? In essence, yes, we do have to pay for everything. It's been incredibly frustrating. Basically because, as several people know in this room, whether they are politicians or not, they will know what I've said, and I've said in public before, is that I have a disabled son, and he does things with his carers. He goes to Wirral to do things, he goes to Nelsey to do things, he goes to Clevedon. He actually goes to Clevedon to help clean up Clevedon. We tried to get him to do it here, and we couldn't. It was impossible. Too much health and safety regulations. It's absolutely crazy, absolutely bonkers. But that's a debate for another time. But in essence, what we're looking for is to try and make this as easy as possible for them. Yeah. So at the moment, what we have to do is charge them to come. What we'd rather do is not charge them to come. It's really important for people like this to socialise. If you've ever been to one of these, and I know a few people in here have, you will see that they get together and they begin socialising with each other. They begin doing things that we take for granted. They become included.
Yes.
And that is very, very important to me because I know how isolated they can become, and we can almost push them aside. But if I can just, it's not my words, it's the words of somebody else in this room who's wearing a cap. It's quite interesting that all those places that Mark goes to do things, it ends up the place that he doesn't do very much at all is probably the richest of the lot. Yeah. Thank you very much. Right, you're a test. Oh, right, would you like to come up?
Yeah, good evening everybody. My name's Bob Cartwright, Robert, but I hate the name Robert. I've been here 7 years. I'm from a small town in Newhaven in Sussex, and I've seen what's happened there that I dread to think that will happen here in Portishead. I've loved this town ever since I moved here. There's been a lot going on tonight. I haven't got a PhD. I work in a warehouse. I'm, did reasonably well at school. I'm not that well educated. But I believe that a lot of things that have been discussed today, we need to support the media, because I think the more we put on media, the more we encourage other people to join us, especially the younger people. If we make it entertaining, short blog videos, as if anyone knows what a blog video is, if we bring that to the media, Portishead, Hello Portishead, there's 11,000 people on that site. That's 11,000 people that are going to see it. If it brings more people to us to support what goes on here, the gentleman said that the town council are nothing, they're just at the bottom of the list. But that doesn't stop the people of Portishead voicing. I'm not a rebellion, I don't believe in any of that. But I think the more people that support it, the more media that we create, whether it's just Bristol Live on ITV if anyone picks it up, or ITV itself, if we get that, then that supports us, that puts the council into a position where they've got to do something about it, instead of just hiding away about it. There's so many issues, the lake grounds, the skate park, the woods, the potholes, the industry that we have here, which is virtually pointless. If I was an 18-year-old, how am I going to get a job in Portishead? Yeah. I need a car, so you get a car, which creates more transport. It's on a knock-on effect. Everything has a knock-on effect. If young people have got to go and get a car, they go out of Portishead, they come back into Portishead. There's more traffic on the road. They order from Amazon, places like that, which means more vans into Portishead. As everyone recalls, remember the M5 when that shut down? Where did the lorries go? Through Portishead. Did we get any money for it? No. But they put potholes in Bristol Road, didn't they?
More people on the doctor's waiting list.
Exactly. We got 2 doctor surgeries in Portishead. Like someone said, infrastructure. Where is it? We've got one major school, 2 doctors covering what, 38,000 people in Portishead? I did my back in about 4 weeks ago at work, and I said, can't be in work tomorrow. Can you get a doctor for me? I said, yeah, I'll probably be back to work by the time I get to see the doctor. And it was 2.5 weeks to see a doctor for a bad back. Most of the people here, I don't know, disrespect to anyone, but probably 35 and over. We need the youngsters here, we need the 25-year-olds. And the only way we're going to make it interesting for them to see it is through the media. So we need to make it interesting for them to support us. And when it comes to voting, those people from 25 to 35 are going to vote. And they're going to vote right, and it's going to help us move on. That's all I have to say. Thanks very much.
I've got an idea, because I know it's getting late. I've got a 2-year-old and it's my turn tonight, so I've got an idea to pull this all together, and I hope you can agree. What I want to say first, though, is what's good about tonight is I think you have a choice, and this is what tonight has been about. Do you want democracy in this town where you go every 4 years, vote for somebody, and then leave them to it? That's one way of doing it, and if that's for you, then I fully support it. And I don't support it, but I support your choice to do that. But what you've seen tonight is a type of democracy where we all have a voice. Democracy is too precious to be left in the hands of just 14 people. Democracy belongs to us all, and this is what you've seen tonight. What I'm suggesting is, if Paul's been quite kindly taking us through and putting the key points, is that we put all these key points into a motion that states that we can't solve the problems we have here tonight, but that we call upon Portishead Town Council to host, by a period of time, I'll leave it up to you, a democracy day that invites people in the town to come up with a plan that revitalises democracy and communication in Portishead, and that has these topics that you've raised tonight, on the agenda, and that from that, councillors and the citizens of the town working together come up with a draft plan that goes out to consultation for the citizens of the town on how we re-energise and reinvigorate democracy in this town and create the type of democracy that we want to see. I suggest Paul goes through those, make sure that everyone's in agreement with them, and then what we do is we put that as a proposal with all those added things. We then, as well, we have the ladies and gentlemen of the press present. What I would say is we have a spare sheet of paper, and I encourage you all to sign, and that we produce a letter that goes to these press agencies to say that this is the recommendation of the Portishead residents meeting, and we call upon, we actually challenge the councillors of Portishead Town Council to put it on the agenda for debate. They don't even have to agree with it, they just need to debate it. And that's my proposal. Does everyone think that's a good idea to kind of wrap things up?
Hi, my name's Xavier, I'm a resident. Just to bring something back to people have been talking about democracy dying. I've been going on to council meetings for the last 3 or 4 years, I think, and I've seen some pretty awful things going on there, but I've also seen a lot of positivity of people offering to help. Most of it's rejected. One thing that was quite apparent right from the first meeting I ever went to, the town council meeting, was that there was no interaction whatsoever. It was like being back at school. You were told to shut up after the public speaking thing. So there's that breakdown. So then things are going on within the council after the public participation that nobody can get involved with. So I actually, on 2 separate occasions, gave a proposal, and other people have done this as well, it's not just me, but put a proposal in that having sat on various committees at Green Rugby Club, the Cricket Club, and various other functions around Portishead, there was always such a thing as called matters arising, whereby someone could bring something up one meeting and it would be answered the following meeting. And if it wasn't answered, the person who it was directed to had to come back and say, sorry, I'm still researching into that. And it wouldn't be dropped until the matter had been closed and come to a conclusion. Well, we don't have that. And so I would like to say, can we have on the list of things here, can we have matters arising whereby a subject is brought up at a council meeting and it's responded to at the next meeting, even if that response is, sorry, I haven't got your answer yet, I'll get back to you next meeting. But then it's put on the agenda again and again and again. Some of you might recognise that as a skate park, but I'm not going down that road. But any item is put on again and again and again until it is resolved. And then if it's not resolved within a certain time period, the chairman surely must be able to pull up whoever it's directed to then. Okay? That's all.
Paul could just go through some of the things that have been discussed. Sorry.
Okay. So this is really just a health check to make sure I've captured the key thoughts, and if anyone wants to add something, please shout at the end. Okay. So I'm just going to rattle these through so you can kind of just remind you. We started with Section 106 monies. Why isn't it being spent to benefit Portishead? So that was Janet's opener. Next one was Portishead residents need a voice at council meetings, and lots of the contributions were on that theme. I included John Clark's rather technical suggestion. I gave that to so John Clark. Someone queried about whether John Clark had been captured here, and that's why I captured his idea, because it's very much about how do you get residents involved and have the right to have their say at council meetings. So that's the real kind of big theme that comes from most of the contributions. Okay. Produce an annual report.
balance development with infrastructure, which was again, I think, mentioned by Jonathan just now about the keeping things in balance. Residents deserve answers. So that thing about if you ask a question of a councillor, you would like to think that you can eventually get an answer to your question. Okay? Use another repeat one. This came up a couple of times. Use technology to improve communications. 21st century technologies apply, please. Okay. A big theme: consultation. Ask people what they think. So a very big input from yourself. Okay. Harness the skills and the abilities of residents. There's a pool of talent in this town that isn't being used and utilised to good effect. Several suggestions about the processes and the standing orders, but let's have processes and standing orders for council meetings that actually promote democracy, including matters arising, to capture the last point, okay? Avoid party political bias. Annual residents' meetings should have an independent chair as a kind of a right, as a kind of a routine thing. Create a neighbourhood plan, but create that plan based on genuine consultation with residents, not just a straw poll of 12 selected people, but let's have a resident survey, let's try and engage all the town with that neighbourhood planning process. I took the point from Mr. Smith, who I think he's left now, but the point is that you vote in your councillors. So in a sense, who you have in your councillors is really down to you to vote, yeah? And vote appropriately, okay? So it's your fault if you don't like it, okay? His other point was that a lot of the big political decisions are actually located at the district council level rather than the town council level. So his point was North Somerset Council have the real power. But I think the response to that was that we can also elect district councillors as well as town councillors. Again, you get what you vote for. Support the needs of young people was a theme towards the end. And particularly another variation of that was engage young people in the political process. You know, let's not all be more senior citizens. Let's see some youth and some vitality and the young people getting engaged and wanting to get engaged because they're excited, yeah, by the prospect of influencing the town they live in. Okay? I think that's it.
Yeah. Can I just suggest? If I can suggest one possible thing to add to that, and it's an idea, you'll have to work out the logistics of it, and that is that the town council invites all the district councillors to a public meeting. Yeah, I know. Because we have a disconnect in this town whereby we have district councillors who represent Portishead at Weston-super-Mare, but unless we all go schlepping into Weston-super-Mare, we're never going to get any kind of interaction with them. So if we can get them all in the folk hall, or get some of them in the folk hall, perhaps twice a year or something, we'll work out, we'll iron out the details.
And lock the doors.
And lock the doors. Portishead district councillors is to get them into some kind of forum in the folk hall whereby essentially they're answerable to the people of Portishead. I should not be having to chase a councillor over questions about the lake grounds. You know, I'm going to go off on one, but that's essentially it.
There's a lady over there.
Do you want to come up? Or?
I haven't really got what to say, I just want to ask something.
You need to be able to, people need to be able to hear you.
I could have brought one.
Another time.
My question goes back to the comments I made earlier on. If the council, and I have no opinion one way or another, and I have no experience of this, if the council are as bad as lots of people have been making out today, I'm not quite sure what you think that list is going to do. I think that's pie in the sky. I think people are being very naive. If they are as dreadful as everyone seems to be making out they are, they're just going to take one look at that and say, yep, thanks very much, and move on. And in a year's time, when we have another residents' meeting, we will still be talking about this, if we're allowed another residents' meeting, and if all the other things have happened in the meantime don't go on. I'm particularly worried about Janet's discussion at the very beginning, which we didn't really get a chance to talk about, is this money. Every day that goes by, we're running out of time. I don't want to be here in another year's time, sitting and listening to the same things that I hear and see on Facebook and Hello Portishead, knocking the council. I agree with the gentleman that spoke earlier. It's getting really boring. What I want to do is get something done. I want things to move. I want that money to be traced. I want it to be spent in Portishead, and I want some action. I am not prepared to sit through another meeting like this, listening to the same old people who I have to say were quite impressive in their speeches and what they said, but we've heard it all before. We need to do something different, and with all due respect, I don't think that list is going to make
There's an election in there.
Doesn't make any difference. Changing the councillors is not going to change if the money is sitting there in that bank, disappearing as every day goes past. We need some action now.
Can we postpone the just to say two responses really. One is I think Caritas has given you an idea, a suggestion about how we want to move this agenda forward in the short term. But as people have already noted, that on May the 2nd there's an election, and you might have an alternative. You might be presented with a better alternative in terms of who to vote for, and I would suggest you take that opportunity. Sorry, is there any other ideas that people want flagged up on the chart, on the board, on the page?
Sandra Green, I'm a resident. It's no new ideas, just two different wordings in two different points. I was horrified, if I heard correctly, that if the 106 money is not spent by a certain date, it returns to the developers.
Yeah.
Did I hear that?
Yes, that's right.
Has that ever happened?
Not yet.
Well,
not that we know.
I mean, that's something that really, really needs to be highlighted if it ever goes back to developers. So that's perhaps an addendum or something that makes that very, very clear. And somewhere where we're talking, the plan that we're talking about, recreating or creating, I think the word planning was used. Now, most people think about the word planning only in terms of houses and building. I think we need a much wider, broader one, and the word vision is what you're really looking for. Portishead's vision as how we want to see this town develop. So I think the word planning pulls it in to houses, buildings or whatever. I may be wrong, but that's what I immediately think when I hear the word planning.
Bring the railway back.
Can I suggest then, and I take that lady's point on board, but I'm an optimist. I believe many voices can make a difference, and it is persistence, and it is about saying that we want change and we want things to be different. It's not a party political thing, it's a thing about accountability. Personally, I couldn't care less who you voted for on May the 2nd. I'm a candidate, vote for me, vote for someone else, couldn't care less. But we need change. Whoever delivers it, whether it's the Conservatives or whatever, we need change. And this is what we can propose here tonight. And yes, they may sit there, they may not even put it on the agenda, but we have press here, we have our voices, and I think what I would propose is that we recommend that they host a day with the members of the town and councillors to discuss this and come up with a plan that is then sent out to consultation, and that we have a discussion by the February meeting of full council to ratify a new communications plan to re-energise democracy in this town. And that's my proposal.
Here.
Pat Gardner once again. Great piece of work. for all of what has been decided on that bit of paper tonight, what I'd like to know is if they do to that what they do to virtually everything else, as is, ignore it and go on to talk about something that's their own little pot plan. What are we going to do about it?
First of all, exactly the point. We need a plan B, we need next step.
We try and we try and we try. That's how democracy works. You try and you keep trying. And you try and you keep your voices heard. You have opportunities in May, we have an opportunity tonight. Democracy isn't perfect. It's the best form of all the worst governance, or something Churchill said. So yes, I really think people need to go home, Janet. I really think.
One more thing. If you want the document that I've got from 2018 on S106 money, please leave your email there and I'll email it to you. And S106 money, just for that lady there, I've been going on about it for the last 3 or 4 years. This is the first time I've had any response, and at last I'm having a response, and it's getting out there. So thank you everybody for listening to that.
We've got district councillors here.
Chris, can you come to the microphone?
I think another time. I think this could be part of a response later on.
Can I ask, because I do feel there's people leaving already, that proposal, can we go for a vote? Does that seem fair? Okay. All those in favour? All those against? Abstentions? Fabulous, thank you very much.
Thank you everyone, thank you for attending, and I'll let you go now.
Can we have a round of applause for Nick, please, for joining us today? And also for Ben, who's been live streaming at the back there, big thank you for him.
That's brilliant. And that's the lady there in the black with the little white bits. There, can you see that lady? Quite quickly catch her. I think I might be the oldest because I've lived here all my life on my family before me. I can't believe you're that old. 90? Would you be 90? No, not at all. Hello.
I know you have. We've got a town council thing coming up in the next meeting with North Somerset officers to see. Some of your facts I think are incorrect, but generally you've got the best you can. Yeah, and money has been given back in my lifetime. No, it's straightforward money. I hope they have tied it up better. This 106 money crops up as an election issue every 8 years. Yeah, no, it crops up every 8 years. Somebody gets into it. The one that went back, and I sincerely hope the officers tied it up better than they did, and that is there was a time limit on the money spent to the Ham Green Hospital development site. No. It was going to be the railway. They had to provide money for a station. And as there's never going to be a station at Ham Green anyway, the developers had the money back. But,
I know that somebody